the way I wanted to address this question is just how I really got into like progressive news and news. So I wasn't into it until I was like in my early 20s, let's say, and it was actually during when the Libyan civil war started and when the Arab Spring started. So I started like watching news very closely, and I was watching CNN a lot and BBC. So for a year I watched these news channels, but then I suddenly found out about the real news. I remember someone in class, I was in uni, someone in class mentioned, it was like, yeah, I like to go in this, it was a communication class, I like to go in this alternative, and they started putting out, so I don't know if anybody's familiar with the real news, but they started probably like 12 years ago now, and they just put out YouTube videos. They're based in Baltimore, also very active in Baltimore politics, and then yeah, I started with like a YouTube, just like videos. So I started watching them. They're really good, and they used to be really good. I mean, before they kind of switched to the whole concentrating more on Baltimore and issues in Baltimore, they would cover international news, which I guess is less. You hear that less in the other progressives that we're going to discuss. They would cover international news, and they would have really good guests. And then they would have, what was the name of the show? Reality Asserts Itself. And it would be like 6 or 7 episodes where they would start talking about like the person, his background, like Vijay Prashad, he was one of them. He was on it. All these big people you can talk about. And then it's released in 6 or 7 10-minute videos. Those were amazing. And then I found out Democracy Now! And I started listening to Democracy Now! But Democracy Now! Is really good. And for instance, Jeremy Scahill, I didn't know he was an intern there at first, and that's where it started. And I really like Democracy Now, although they haven't changed their format ever. They haven't touched it, so I haven't watched it in maybe like 3 years or so. I mean, I feel like after a while, if you just continue watching the same people and the same channels, it's kind of the same issues that reappear. So yeah, those are two that like I was watching religiously. Every single thing, every single day, that everything that they put every day for like at least 3 or 4 years. But yeah, I started off with those two kind of.
Right. Well, fascinating origin story. I mean,
Origins.
yeah, comparable to, best Batman Joker. But but that's pretty good. Yeah, I remember, to be honest. To be honest, I remember I used to talk a lot of politics with you, and just you,
No, I wasn't into it
of
exactly. I mean,
walking back
yeah.
away from me.
No, I suddenly got into it.
Yeah, yeah, suddenly.
It was suddenly, and then it was like a year transition, and then I was like super into like
When
progressive and leftist news.
you remember you visited me in Europe at some point, and at the time we were studying North
Yeah,
America, and I think that was during your transition period because
yeah,
you
I
were
just started
slightly
kind of.
interested, yeah, but not quite committed to the
Yeah,
cause. But yeah,
the cause.
yeah, not clear what cause, but yeah. No, to be honest, I've grown up in a not a yeah. It's just I've always been. I grew up in a place where everybody was interested in politics and history and uh, geopolitics, economy, all that shit. So I got into it very early on. I've always been into it. Uh, Back in yeah, like but you know, I always like my dream was to become either a lawyer or a politician. So that's pretty crazy. Two most evil jobs on the planet Earth. But yeah, I've always loved geopolitics, especially because it's kind of like war games, I suppose. It's kind of like the RPG game. But yeah, the online though, like watching news online and getting into online news commentary. That for me sort of started with there was a that used to be massive online. It's not so much anymore. I was highly into Christopher Hitchens and Richard Dawkins and sort
So
of
wait,
the
how would
aggressive.
they? But yeah, yeah, okay, okay, okay. So let me stop you there. But back then, I guess people didn't really have news channels. You would kind of watch like segments of their talks, kind of things like that, right? Yeah.
I think there were channels then, and I was at
But like
uni.
Christopher Hitchens didn't have. Now, if he was still alive, he'd have the
Oh
Christopher
yeah, his own.
Hitchens
Yeah,
show
yeah, yeah,
channel,
show or
yeah,
something. Yeah, although he
podcast.
was
Jeez, that would be
more of a
not
right.
bad. Hmm.
He would have been
That's not
great.
a maybe bring him back with one of those what's that way that you holograms? No, what are they called? Like they do. Oh,
Like a spirits, like call him.
no.
Uh,
Oh,
I don't
anyway.
know. Resurrection? What are you
No,
talking
no, no.
about?
Okay. No, no.
Oh,
Sorry. Okay.
like a
Y-
digital recreation,
Yeah.
like a Star Wars did with.
Yeah.
But, yeah, all right. That's no, but it's his unpredictableness. That was his one of his best qualities. So I don't know if they can catch that in a hologram. But
Yeah. No, of
yeah,
course.
so yeah, I was massively into him and stuff. So I got into watching videos about that type of thing. That's where I came across Kyle Tilinsky and Secular Talk. To be honest,
So how
uh,
old is his channel? Wow, it must be like 8 years old now.
12, I think, or something. More
Stop.
than
Shit. I wonder how old he was when he started it.
I think he was 20 or something, and now he's like about 30, 32 or something. Well, I'll check, to be honest.
No, go ahead.
Uh,
Yeah, you continue on. I'm checking.
and yeah, but then, I found out about the Young Turks, which was relatively a more professional, like, news coverage channel.
Yeah, 12 years ago. But okay, let me stop you there though with the Kyle Kalinske thing. Earlier on off camera, you were telling me, and I guess it makes sense with the name Secular Talk, but he was much more into like the, I don't know, atheist, agnostic, secular debates and
Yeah, back then, especially those days, besides Iraq War and all of that bullshit,
yeah.
this is before 2008 when the economic issues came into forefront. The religious extremism and their meddling in politics and all that was a
You're
bigger
absolutely
issue.
true. And I mean, yeah, yeah,
And
of course.
there was massive debates with Richard Dawkins and all that.
Yes.
It was partially due to the fact that that was used as a way of propaganda to justify Iraq and Afghanistan war,
I mean, that's around the
especially
time where
after
Christopher Hitchens had also switched, let's say, and he was on the Bush side.
yeah,
Yeah.
2003 he switched and
Yeah.
supported the Iraq war. Yeah, so this is again, yeah, before the economic crisis. So
And
and
what kind of videos was Kyle making? Like, what was he saying? Do you remember? Or I didn't watch him back then. I
he
don't.
used to make fun of a lot of Christian fundamentalists and religious. He used to argue a bit with them, I guess indirectly. He was an opponent of the Iraq War, I'm pretty sure.
But I guess
And
then
yeah,
after
but
that,
back then he was
the recession hit, so he probably affected his content. I'm just guessing.
no, I mean, I don't know if it was a conscious thing or not. Even it just focused. I think because we are about the same age as him and stuff. Our generation focus completely changed towards economic issues, and religious stuff really got old and sort
That's
of
very true.
it's a very sort of it's an endless argument when it
Eh,
comes to matters that relate to really ontological level of if you really believe in a creator or not and that type of thing. So it was people got sort of, I guess, tired of it. Became clear that it was somewhat of a show. I do think it's important to have those debates and freedom of speech, all of that, and the economic issues felt far more real and um, you know uh, at least for the people living in the first world, because people in the third world were experiencing the economic crisis long before 2008 in many ways. So yeah, that's how I got into news and stuff. But over time, it has become far more professional. Oh, and I watch a lot of BBC videos. They didn't used to have YouTube. I used to go
yeah.
on their own website. Yeah, but yeah, that's how I got
That's
into
that's
online.
really interesting. Like that's personally, I'm like that too. I mean, I can't think of the last time I watched a video or like thought about the whole agnostic, secular debates. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of
Is
like
it
bored of it now. I was into it back then.
for example, is America secular? Technically, it's in its constitution, but
Yeah,
we all know it's highly religious in some aspects. So it's such a, you have to get into details
yeah.
if you really want to do.
Okay, all right, let's go
So
back to progressive news sources. So, Democracy Now! I know is still running just as the way it was. Nothing has changed, I would say, over the years. The real news focus on Baltimore, like I was saying, and the actual person who first started it. I think he left and pretty much started another similar channel. But then, yeah, there's the Young Turks, though. I was kind of into the Young Turks quite a bit, maybe like 3, 4 years, maybe, no, yeah, 5 years ago. Now a bit less. They're a huge channel. They have a lot of content and stuff. Where do you stand? What are your latest thoughts and views about the Young Turks? So let's not go back. Let's just talk about now.
sure, sure. But let me just say that in terms of democracy, and the real news, yes, since the real news got really local, I haven't been following them to be honest.
Yeah, they're
And
extremely local now. Yeah, which
yes,
is
and
good. I also like that, though. To be honest,
yeah,
it's
that's for
it's
the
an
local
interesting thing. Then
people of there. And democracy now, I feel like, wow, you guys are really boring. And the voice, I love Amy Goodman. I think she's a great journalist, but and the Mr.
yeah,
Gonzalez, I forget his first name, but it's like the late night radio talks that and now jazz, like
yeah.
jazz
But
DJs,
it's interesting though their strategy in a way. They're like,
and
we have a formula that works. Some people like
does
this.
it does it
I
work?
think. I mean, they've remained successful. I mean, they're generating
Are
enough money for this size of the business. I mean, they haven't
they
gone backwards.
growing? I suppose I
They
don't know,
haven't. I
but
don't. I don't think they want to grow though. It's as if it's like that.
okay, exactly. Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they don't strike me as the type that want to grow
Yeah,
either. But at any rate, that was just my take on them.
but
I
they're
like them,
pioneers.
but I can't. I can't watch them. It's too much. I rather watch, ants or something. At the same time, Young Turks, were of, I used to watch them. To be honest, I never really liked them because they have this weird. They're trying to be cool, but teach you at the same time. They have this vibe of a cool teacher that is trying to, being good is cool, man. So and yeah, but I used to watch them because they had great content. To be honest, in terms of politics coverage, and Cenk is quite a good commentator. I quite like, and uh, yeah, it was they're pretty good until I mean. Then they got really good because I used to suddenly for a year I really liked them because Jimmy Dore was there and
So that was
uh,
pre-Trump, probably. That's probably
pre-Trump, yeah, yeah,
2015 primaries.
yeah, yeah. For a year, there was a couple of people who I found very interesting. I mean, some of them clashed. Ryan Grimm used to come a lot. He still goes there a lot, and I love Ryan Grimm. And yeah, but then yeah, Trump happened, and RussiaGate happened, and especially not so much the RussiaGate itself, but the fact that I mean, I would still say that the Young Turks were the only channels that had somebody from the opposing view on their channel, and they didn't kick him out or anything. They didn't impose any regulations
Who
on him.
is that? Who
But
is
I
that?
think
Who's the
Jimmy Dore,
Jimmy Dore? Okay.
that's what he said. He said they never interfered, and they wanted him to stay. He didn't want to stay. But at the same time, I would say that they really need to, if because they are somebody who called out Washington Post and other news organizations for their support for Iraq War, and then lack of acknowledgement in their role and in their so I think they should acknowledge their mistake in regards to that. And that really, yeah, since then I couldn't watch them much because in their coverage of Trump, in my view, they became somewhat hysterical, and not all of them, obviously, members, but and yeah, and their content is somewhat uh, deteriorated since then. Too much focus on Russia stuff, and generally the problem with not just the Young Turks, but all American news commentators that they're way too much domestically focused. Jimmy Dore is
Yeah.
some of the Dore show I love. Uh, I like, to be honest. I don't watch as much because he gets very angry, but that's for content wise. I quite like him,
Yeah.
and yeah, uh,
I mean, over the past year, I would say the Young Turks has just not only become only about domestic. Now it's just pure like little funny weird, strange things about Trump. Like the main videos that they put on their main channel, they're all like this. Like Trump advisor said this. Trump Trump did that. They've just
Yeah,
fallen completely. And yeah, nothing about foreign policy. Not foreign policy, but talking about issues in the other countries. But to be fair, like secular talk, uh, they don't do it there either. And I mean, there's so much in the in U.S.
and
politics that I can see that just consuming all your time.
sure, but at the same, yeah, but we that's what I find very disappointing, that that we, not that we are as good as them or as detailed as them or anything, but we do, read about the news and cover the news, and we know quite significantly about America or about Europe, about France, blah blah blah. So it's not that hard if that's your job to know a little
No,
bit.
but I
And
think they
to
want
be
to.
honest,
But I think they
when
want to
they do,
focus.
yeah, and when they do cover foreign countries, they tend to really suck at it. Like even
Yeah.
Kyle, who I really like, I really hate when he talks about the history of Iran and the idea of backlash following the, because they are not familiar with the historical debates within that country. So they take one take that a certain group agrees with, and they say that as a fact. So yeah, it's they're quite weak. Everybody's quite weak in America in that. And I would say though, yeah, uh, uh, just to add to that is that they may be getting better. Who knows as time goes on, because with globalization.
I don't think they try though too much. I mean, Kyle is also Kyle also just he doesn't he's actually explicitly said it. I heard it that he doesn't want to follow the Young Turks model. Like he wants to
Yeah, yeah,
just be him, just like this. So I mean, as one person, I think it's actually not bad for him. I think that he's specializing on just U.S. politics because then his takes. I mean, his take on the election when he was on the Joe Rogan show. I mean, he predicted things well and he saw things coming very
yeah, yeah.
well. So it helps when you just focus like that. Okay, and then anything else to say about these guys, or I'm just gonna mention who I think. So the latest edition, I would say the superstar of 2020 has definitely been the Rising. So
Oh, you're
they've
yeah,
been like,
like yeah, they
I
both.
only found it hasn't even been a year. I only found about them January of this year. Found out about them January of
Same.
this year. But yeah, they're also all about
I, I,
internal
I
US.
I knew about Crystal Ball because I had
Hmm.
seen her on Young Turks and many other channels quite a lot. But I mean, they started apparently fully doing this online stuff about 2 years or a year ago as well, and they apparently blew up with an Andrew Yang interview.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty good. I think they. I mean, I do feel sometimes, again, yeah, with every channel, you don't agree with everything they say or anything, and they are their format is a bit too jingly for me. Like, oh, now cut to Sager. Now, what
Yeah.
is on your radar? What is on your radar? It's a bit. I don't like that type of stuff. Maybe I'm not. Yeah, I'm not great at it. As every time I try to say like and subscribe, you can tell probably. But yeah, besides that, it's a great show. I think they do
Yeah.
great coverage.
And they have like an interesting angle and dynamic, right? Which is that
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
both like disillusioned left and
anti-establishment of
rightist.
their
Yeah, and
own.
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Sager is a sort of an old-fashioned conservative
Yeah.
in terms of they are economically more aligned and socially far
I
less
think that's
aligned.
what brings them together, kind of.
Yeah, yeah,
That
and
the rich are fucking the poor, and that's kind of like that's like their common denominator. I would say the
yeah, I would say a state-led development. They both agree with a state-led development. They might completely disagree in the details of it, though. Like maybe Saiger would be more for something that the state contracts things out to private
hmm
companies, while Crystal Ball is more inclined towards a state-owned or state owns means of production,
yeah.
something like that. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really looked into them personally. I have used them mostly as a news. They're great for they're great for American news because they do a lot of content about the specific estates. They have some of my favorite people on a lot, like Katie Halper and Ryan Grimm
Yeah,
and Kyle Kalinske. So yeah, they're great. They're great.
No, their channel is definitely good stuff. And then yeah, Katie Halper, you actually watch her a lot. I've subscribed. I haven't watched too many videos, but you like her. And then
Yeah, I think she's great, and she does a podcast with Matt Taibbi as
yeah,
well, who's a great journalist. Useful Idiots. That's a great podcast, but that's a completely formatted, Rolling Stone produced. That's a high-end stuff. Katie Halper show is far more like what we do here.
yeah.
I mean, far better in terms of guests. And yes, she's great because I think her show is not so much about, it's the complete opposite of Hill in that way. That not that Hill doesn't have content, but Katie Halper is completely about content, about the guests. More in many ways more in line with the Joe Rogan style, like doing long interviews with academics, focus mostly on left issues within America, obviously,
Hmm.
but and she brings in great people that debates great stuff, I think. Yeah, I like her a lot, and I've mentioned a couple of times his name, Ryan Grimm. I think he's fantastic, especially for U.S. internal politics. And now with one of the people, oh, let's by the way talk about people we don't like as well. One of the peoples I have hated for a very long time since he was active in UK is Mehdi Hassan, who recently went to Peacock. Peacock is for CNBC or MSNBC, I don't know, but he was the host of the Deconstructed podcast for Intercept, and now Ryan Grimm, who's a far better host and a far better journalist, is I'm obviously being fictitious somewhat here, by the way. Yeah, he's hosting that, and I really recommend everybody checking it out. That's
No,
fantastic.
the other guy you just mentioned, his future lies at Hard Talk.
Yeah,
He should just
CNN.
BBC Hard Talk. I think is perfect for him. Where
Mm,
it
yeah,
kind of because the way he talks and confronts you,
yeah.
you can like close your ears, and it doesn't matter what he's saying is good or bad. Like it will be aggressive in that way. So it's just perfect for that show.
He's a yeah, he's a I don't think he does it consciously, to be honest. I don't know. I'm not in people's brain to know their motives, but I don't know. I just generally don't like the way he argues and what he argues for.
But the
I
way he
mean,
argues is something that I think is it common in England, like in British journalism.
it is far more common in British journalism, especially back in the days with Jeremy Paxman. And yeah, you can argue that, what's his name? Stephen something, the Hard Talk interviewer. But they usually do it with far more tact. And he's is a bit of a, it's like he keeps spitting in people's faces as well. Have you noticed? He's like, well, why not? Why not Iran? Why not?
I haven't
Uh,
watched too much of
Shut the
it.
fuck down. Let the other person. I don't know. And yeah, he's in my view. I hate people who. I mean, I I'm I come from a Muslim background, Islamic background, and I hate people like him that, in my view, make that issue a major issue in terms of they focus way too much, in my view, on Islam, and they represent Islam as a race, and they are anyway, they're far too focused on identity politics. Is by the way, I'm sitting here, with how many viewers do we have on our average like YouTube video, like 100 or something, and half of them is me checking it over and over again. So I'm not in any place to judge. It's just a
Yeah.
personal opinion. So whatever. Yeah.
No, but one thing I haven't heard from Mehdi Hassan since he came on my radar when he had that interview with Chomsky about voting for Biden over Trump and not voting. Do you remember there was
He
a
he's quite yeah.
he agreed there was that whole debate, right? So like
With Kyle
Chang
Kalinske. Yeah.
Chang and Cenk and Mehdi Hassan and Noam Chomsky, there were like three who like were on that side of the debate, and then there was Kyle Kalinske about no, you have to vote for Biden and lesser of the two evils, and
To be
then
honest,
the same
I
reoccurring
think
argument every four
there were
years.
many, yeah, there were many people on the side that you shouldn't vote or whatever. Kyle
Yeah,
Kalinski's position was that I don't care what you do, I'm
yeah,
just not voting,
yeah,
which I thought was a very reasonable. Like, I understand if people have different rationale for their own decision.
Yeah. And if you're not in a
So
swing
since they're
state, just
that, they're
stop
not.
talking. Just like, and if you're not in a swing state, just vote for. Actually, you should vote green if you're not in a swing state. To be honest, if you're like a progressive, if you like more go towards there, or maybe vote something else. But anyway,
Socialist International.
yeah, okay. Let's forget about that. But yeah, and they never even mentioned that this is only a discussion if you're in a swing state. So
Yeah, yeah. It's just I hate people who are, they don't like, instead of arguing their points, they start arguing either against your character or against the consequences of your action, type of thing.
yeah,
I find that somewhat annoying and cheap, to be honest. You're an enabler or blah, or because you can say, all right, you did, it's just such a, yeah, is who's responsible for what? Anyways, it's just, yeah, not a genuine argument, not a genuine argument in my view. And you see Noam Chomsky argue the same point far better, far more calmly, without coming across as a creep. And
yeah,
anyway, don't want to get,
yeah.
anyway.
Okay, what
Maybe
else?
cut that.
We mentioned the Intercept in passing, but we forgot to talk about Glenn Greenwald a bit. Where is Green? What's the name of his new endeavor? Do you know?
He apparently there is a website Substack that is kind of like a, I suppose, YouTube for journalists or writers,
Yeah, yeah,
and he's apparently already is topping the charts in that
yeah.
or something.
Jesus.
In the Intercept, when Intercept started, it was fantastic, and again the fucking
Yeah.
Trump election, and
What are your thoughts about Intercept?
I completely, well, in the whole feud they had with Glenn Greenwald, I take the Glenn Greenwald side, and I think that they are they used to be a great journalistic institution, and they still do great stuff about domestic policy in America, but they do a lot of bullshit as well, especially in terms of foreign policy. I think James Risen, like the guy who I think they are terrible writers, and like they did a piece about some leaks about Iran intelligence ministry, and even in terms of writing they've deteriorated. The articles start as these shortest stories in a dark corridor at night, a USB. Come on, this is supposed to have been more about actual content, not the typical bullshit you read in New York Times or Washington Post, where they start with a sort of a event, like they want to,
Hmm.
it's not fucking, you're not writing fiction, okay? Put aside your
I
dream
think they're
of
like
writing a novel
financing
aside.
in. Yeah. I mean,
I
I'm
think,
yeah. But I
and
always get emails from them like asking for money for financing and stuff. But I feel like at one point they went like too hard into like their branding and their financing because Intercept has like a like it has like a cool brand identity kind of. But now it seems
yeah,
like going into like just embracing
no,
it
no,
too
but
much.
I mean, and they're, by the way, supported by, they are funded by uh, Pierre Omidyar, famous American, Iranian French American entrepreneur,
Founder of
but
eBay.
founder of eBay. And he apparently, according to Glenn Greenwald, he wasn't the one who again interfered ever. And seems to be the case a lot of times, that the funder or the person with the money, the billionaire class themselves, are not the bad guy. The managers they have are
Yeah.
I forget her
I wonder
name.
if he was still putting in money though, because they kept on raising funds. So I know he started it. He put the initial money, but I wonder if he
I think
still.
he's still contributing somewhat, but according to Glenn Greenwald, especially in their New
Yeah.
York office, they spend a fuckload, but they don't do much. Especially, like, James Risen, as he pointed out, he writes what, once every 6 months or something, and he probably has the highest salary because of his name recognition and
He
all
was there
that.
from the beginning ish.
No, no, it's not James Risen. No, no, he
But
didn't.
he came in like a year into it or
He,
something.
they tried to basically, no, after, no, 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 not even that early. But although Intercept is not that old, they're 4 years
It's
old
like
anyway.
no. I think they're like 6 years, good 6 years old, and they hit the ground
Okay, he
running.
came in
So they hit the ground
right
running
after.
with Glenn Greenwald and
Look, I think this is the version Glenn Greenwald gives, and to my mind, and based on my observation, it makes the most sense. Is the fact that after Trump's election, and they were blamed, they among many others were blamed by covering Hillary emails and blah blah blah,
Hmm.
by covering Hillary's flaws, that they played a part in electing the most disturbing person in history as the president. American Andrew Jackson used to suffocate American Indians with his own hands. So I don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but American indigenous people, I mean. So they try to balance this out by bringing people like James Risen and that type of people in, or they even published articles by that idiot that writes for Guardian. I can't believe these people get paid. Luke something, the one that walked out of a interview with Aaron Mate, lied. Pretty much everything he has written about RussiaGate has been like
Oh, I
proven
don't know
false.
him.
Luke something, Luke something. Anyways, but yeah, so since then, since RussiaGate, they have gone way down. They have gone way down, even in terms of domestic politics, even in terms of writing and everything. So that's a disappointing thing. Guardian, similarly, I used to like far more. They went crazy before Trump and all that. They went crazy with Jeremy Corbyn. They
Hmm.
went crazy with Jeremy Corbyn became the Labour leader, and that was very disappointing because I thought because
Yeah.
until they were in complete opposition, the hard left, they kept writing, oh, these are the stuff we want, but we can't have because they're far too out of reach. But then when there was a chance to get those things, suddenly they became more right wing. Like BBC had a far fairer coverage of Jeremy Corbyn, in my view, than Guardian did. So yeah, just during the last few years, my take on the news has been basically the struggle against Russiagate and finding good sources that don't cover news in a hysterical and a bombastic manner.
Yeah. No, I feel you. I'm also not too much into The Guardian anymore. And then, yeah, you mentioned you like reading foreign policy and I guess like other places, like good articles. Good. I remember Noam Chomsky once said this. He said that like he reads like 10 of the main newspapers every day or whatever, maybe less. But his main point was that if you read all of the newspapers, there's good content in it, and there are some things that they cover genuinely and they don't have an agenda again. It's just that the general media, the one that come into the TV, the main narratives, the main big stories, they're the ones that are just complete complete garbage.
Oh yeah, with the whole Russia stuff, we saw that you would have this headline that there may be a hack of major electricity grid of a city by Russian forces or blah blah blah, and then 2 days later when they retracted it, a
Yeah.
smaller segment of. So yeah, obviously,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
you're
like the New
right.
York Times might do like terrible coverage on that because that's an issue that they're so embedded into and like US interests and blah blah. But then if there's like a country or an issue where there are no immediate interest really on, then they might do like a really good job in covering that specific story. So it just kind of depends on where they fall with the issues, a lot of these newspapers.
True, true. Yeah, it depends. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like there's a I don't know. It was in inside joke, or maybe it wasn't. It was quite into. But there is like, if you want to find out the news about the U.S., watch RT.
Yeah.
If you want to find out the news about Russia, watch CNN. Like it's almost no, not now.
Yeah.
Now they're completely mad. Yeah, watch American good news sources. Like when any news organization tend to have has its own agenda, and you should try to focus on the news where they have the least amount of
Yeah.
agenda there. Unless you're watching somebody who's a academic or something that is focusing on an issue, in my view. So
Yeah.
yeah, but the Intercept and Guardian was really sad, especially Intercept was because I gotten used to their podcast, and
But
I
their
like
okay, but that podcast, okay, the one that Jeremy Scahill did, you remember that one?
yeah,
That one was
I like
only about Trump. That one only about Trump, and I think that one, it.
it became only about Trump.
Oh, I only heard it was just about Trump, and it had some really high end production. Like I mean, the music and stuff was amazing. But then I remember
Yeah,
there was one thing, but I guess I used to believe that too. But I think that podcast, one of the main things like Jeremy Scahill, everyone used to say is that okay, Trump won't even last 6 months. Okay, he's president now, but he's gonna have a heart attack or he's gonna get bored and he's gonna leave. And that was like the main
Wow,
argument
I
that
didn't
was
know
made,
that.
I remember, throughout the first year of that podcast. And I used to kind of think that too for the first 6 months or a year. But then it became clear that yes, he has like he can't focus on an issue. Everybody knows that, but he can focus on his own brand and doing his own
I,
thing in a
I
consistent level.
like to say I made a bet that Trump will not be kicked out of office and stay in office, and I did when I made the bet like 4 days or 5 days after he won the election. I like to point that out, but
Okay, okay.
yeah,
No, no,
yeah,
yeah, and then
I
yeah,
didn't
there
know
were thought.
Sato
Yeah.
was such a was he so wow? I didn't know about that. I haven't followed his work for a
No, I
while. I
remember it
suppose.
wasn't like it was just like this guy is old and he has one of them was just that. One of his things was like this guy is old and he has a terrible diet, so we won't be surprised if he dies. And the other one was like he'll get bored and and leave. I remember those were the
Fair
main
enough.
ones, but then it was just about the
He'll
Trump
see
thing.
himself in the mirror like a cat, and then he gets distracted.
Uh, But yeah, okay. Anything else about news channels, blah, 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 before we talk a little bit about what we want to do with this channel and our our vision 2021.
Uh, to be honest, no. Let me just
Where'd you get your news about Iran and let's say like other issues like Turkey and like Nagorno-Karabakh? Where were you following these kind? Where do you follow this
to
kind of
be
stuff?
honest, usually BBC reports a piece of news or Reuters. BBC mostly I follow BBC reports a piece of news, and then I Google that and I try to read as much as there is. But I like DW is pretty good. It's a the German version of BBC basically.
Is BBC
They
your go-to like institutional like mainstream channel though? Is
yeah,
it your
yeah,
favorite? I think mine is maybe Al Jazeera. I don't know. It's the one I
yeah.
watch
I
the
know,
most
yeah.
often, but
I mean, it's. I mean, BBC is biased, but I know it's as somebody who doesn't believe that there is such thing as fairness and stuff. But they do genuinely seem to be the fairest of most news coverage, at least
yeah,
English ones. And then DW is good. France 24, Al Jazeera. But I never check these in the morning. I check BBC. I don't check these.
okay.
I check, what's RT? RT is pretty good. RT is a bit Fox Newsy sometimes. I don't like that. What else? But DW France 24 are far better on Africa and Middle East, for
Mm-hmm.
example. C's far better on Europe and Middle
Yeah,
East and so it's on Anadolu or
yeah,
something agency, which is Turkish, I believe. They're pretty good. So not on issues regarding Turkey, by the way. Oh, there is a great Indian channel, The Print. Apparently, The Print is a newspaper in India. It's a popular
mm,
newspaper. There is a old guy Shekhar Gupta, if I'm not mistaken. I don't agree with him. He's very anti-left and all that, but he's when he gives an overview of the subject, his details, it's fantastic. Um, and because of that, I've gotten into Indian political news. It's just because he explains it pretty good. Um, a couple of Israeli like Haaretz, if I'm
yeah,
not mistaken. I checked that website once in a while.
yeah. They're supposed to be really good. They have a good
Yeah.
reputation.
I don't know. Well, do you have any sort other sources you want to mention?
No, I also watch pretty much the same video channels that you're saying. I go on Google News a lot, which gives you kind of the stuff that you follow. It kind of that's how it
Ah,
shows you what's there. Yahoo News World, they have a selected number of news that they do, but usually it's just the news from the agency itself, so either AP, Reuters, or AFP. So that's pretty good to watch. Okay, but my secret is the first thing I check in the morning, and it's just an old habit from a few years ago, is the Guardian. But not for like necessarily news, but to see if the world has ended. Like just their just their first story, just to see if I have to go back to sleep and it's all over, or
that
yeah,
to be honest, I check Guardian more than even BBC just for the headlines. That's
uh,
yeah.
but no.
I don't wanna. I keep trying to. I feel like a dirty person when I use Guardian.